Welcome to Middle Fingers Up, the show where we hold our heads high and our middle fingers higher. I'm your host, Kieran McKay. Today's guest has her own podcast called Now, and it stands for Now or Never, and it is about the climate crisis. It's about sustainability. She is on a mission to help bring awareness about ways in which everyone can play a part through discussions about fashion, consumerism, commercial trade, social media, and education, and sometimes maybe even a lack thereof. She is committed to helping find solutions to better our planet. And did I mention she's only 17? Today we have Daniele. Welcome. It's so nice to have a fellow podcaster on my show today, and you were the first. You're a first fellow podcaster. Very excited and nervous at the same time to have you on today.
Hi, I'm so honored. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's crazy that just a few months ago, we had no idea that the other person existed. We don't know each other. This is our second face-to-face conversation. We're kind of doing like a little Zoom meeting today because we are in different parts of the world. You come from Lithuania. So as I mentioned, You're 17. You found me through social media because you were doing an interview, which we'll get into, with starter podcasters like myself. And at first when you messaged, I thought, oh, okay, I've been getting a lot of DMs with the spammers and the scammers that want to take your money and promote your podcast. And so I was like, who is this? And then when I read what you wrote, it really set with me because I was doing the same thing as you at that time, which was I was starting out and I was sending a lot of cold DMs and cold emails to a lot of people that had no idea that I existed. And so I really appreciated that you were doing the same thing in the way that I was. And you interviewed me for a course that you're working on. And in that interview, I asked you, do you want to come on? Because I love learning a lot about you in the short time. And I said to you before we even started recording, the fact that you're 17 and it doesn't feel that way when we talk. The fact that you have a podcast and you're 17. So come on, let's talk. How are you doing? Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for that short introduction. Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm very, very happy to be here. This is my first time coming on another podcast, being interviewed. It's so strange to be a guest, not the host. But I love it. I'm so happy, and I'm looking forward to a good, productive conversation.
Yeah. Me too. I really am. And I'm glad you agreed to come on too. And it must be weird. The tables have turned. So for you to be on the other end, right? Yeah, I have not done that. So I think that I would feel the same way if it was me. So before we get to know a little bit more about who you are, where you're from, what you're doing, why you contacted me, and definitely a little bit more about your own podcast show, let's dive into our Middle Fingers Up segment. And I'll ask you, what is something that you'd like to put your middle fingers up to today?
So I was thinking about this earlier, and I came up trying to think of something maybe more creative or something, but I feel like my answer is going to be so cliche, but it's true because for a couple of months now, I feel like I've been stuck with the idea of comparing myself with other exchange fellow students, kind of comparing my journeys and everything. I feel like comparing yourself to others now is something I want to kind of erase and move on from. So.
Yeah. I think, how's that going? How are you doing that?
Well, I'm just trying to accept the fact that everyone's different. Everyone's going to have different journeys, different experiences, and what I can do is just control what I do.
Yeah.
So I'm just going by every day, enjoying each moment, and just trying to not care and just enjoy what I have and be grateful for that.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way of looking at it. You are doing a lot of things, and sometimes when you're doing a lot of things, it's easy to get caught up in other people's lot of things because everyone's doing lots of things. Yeah. And I think it's a really nice way to ground yourself to stop and take a minute and look at what it is that you're accomplishing and what is your goal. And we all have our little lanes that we are driving in or walking in or however we want to look at it. And sometimes our lanes cross with other people. And I think that's great. That's lovely. We learn and we grow. However, to stop and appreciate what you're doing as an individual and to honor that, I think that's a lovely habit to start working on, especially as a 17-year-old, because it gets harder over time. You're probably, I would imagine, learning a lot of things in a whole different continent, a different part of the world, and that is probably getting you to think about things in that way too. Are you around a bunch of different exchange students from different parts of the world? Like, is that?
No, I am going to a private girl high school in Baltimore, Maryland. We have like sister and brother schools that also share classes with us, but in the school that I'm in, there's only other exchange student from the same program. But
so like somebody from Lithuania with you, or
from Germany?
Oh, from Germany. Oh, okay. So tell us a little bit about how you got to Baltimore from Lithuania. How does that happen?
Yeah. It kind of started about 3 years ago when my brother went on the same exchange year when he was a junior in high school.
Mm-hmm.
He was in Connecticut. I just kind of got to know the program and the experiences of the program through him.
Okay.
And when he came back from the States back home, I don't know, something very like personally changed in him.
Mm-hmm.
I just like felt like he was a whole new person, so eager to discover more.
Yeah.
And I was just so fascinated by that, because it's like, how can 10 months of your life be so effective? And other than that, I just was, okay, if my brother completely changed as a person, I want to do the same, and I want to discover the world. So when I was last year in 10th grade, I applied for the program. I went through the whole process of the English test, of interviews, of application essays, and all of that. I applied, I got a scholarship, and I got placed in a school in Baltimore, Maryland.
So you said you're here in Baltimore for 10 months?
Yes.
Okay.
I started in August, and I'm leaving in June.
So you're pretty much doing your grade 11, your whole year then?
Yes.
Out.
Yeah.
Wow. Did your brother tell you anything when he came back about why you saw such a different change in him? Did he notice that as well?
I don't know. I haven't like talked to him about how he felt more, but it's kind of like what I saw in him.
Yeah.
I also feel like because all of my life I've been living with a sibling, 10 months without him, kind of like I gained some perspective from it too, and I kind of matured from those 10 months without him.
Mm-hmm.
So when I want to say I met him, because it was like literally a whole different experience. Like I just saw how much more mature in terms of becoming an adult he got, and how he like became just so interested in the world and its problems and everything, and just that kind of it inspired me to go down the same road.
Yeah, I think that's very well said, and the fact that you observed that in him and thought, this would be good for me. A lot of people that have left their home, even literally leaving the house and moving down the street to a different house, let alone leaving the country and the continent. I think there is something to be said in space and having that amount of space between ourselves and our family members and our friends and even the life that we would normally live. I think when we come back to it, like how can we not grow, right? Because you're saying he's exposed to all sorts of different people and beliefs and a different way of looking at maybe the same problem even. And I would imagine for you as well, a different way of looking at all sorts of things coming over to Baltimore in comparison. And probably even I would imagine maybe appreciating the things that maybe you didn't beforehand. You know?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
What is one thing that you did not appreciate before you left your home, your motherland, and now you are like, oh?
That's a good question. Maybe not that I didn't appreciate, but more I didn't realize how big of an impact it has on my life. It's just, I don't know, the sense of the Lithuanian community is so strong. It's so strong. And when you're living in the country, like, you're proud of it and everything, but when you leave the country and you see, like, what big of an impact this little small country up north in Europe has on the whole world, is just so fascinating to see that Lithuania has such a big and rich history, and comparing that to what I'm learning now, like in US history and everything, is just so, like, I'm so appreciative of what the people have done before me in generations to, you know, have everything that we have now in the world, in Lithuania especially. Yeah.
The way that you think, and I noticed this when you were interviewing me as the starter podcaster I had mentioned earlier, I told my husband afterwards, and some friends afterwards too, that, like, I kind of remember being 17. It was an important part of my life, right? You're kind of launching to adulthood. You're getting ready to finish school and maybe plan your future. And I think for a lot of young people, sometimes, at least for me at the time, it's hard to think outside of ourselves. And it's not young people's fault. It happens when we get into our 20s too, where it's just our world. It's how we live it. It's how we view it. But when you talk and when you ask questions and when you explain things, you have such a beautiful bird's eye perspective. You're so outside of that. You see things from, you know, the top of the building versus from the bottom, or being in the building. And I think that to me, when I asked you to come on, it was because I selfishly want to know more about how were you raised? What were some of the cultural norms that got you to this place? Because personally, I don't know if at 17, as much as I would have loved to, I don't know if I could have left my home and moved to a whole different part of the world where I was maybe a big fish in a little pond, and now I'm a little tiny fish in this massive ocean, right? Because you're in this massive country, just a tiny part of it, but the U.S. has such an influence on all of us and all of our culture, and now you're living in it. And I believe you're living in someone else's home, right?
Yes, I'm living with the host family.
And did that host family participate in one of their kids left the home and went to or is it just they brought you in?
The school that I'm in and my host sister is in also has exchange travels to other, like, European countries, and my host sister has been in Czech Republic before for a month with an exchange.
Okay.
There was another exchange student that came to their home before me that was a part of the school that I'm at, like, program. My program is completely different, and the organizers, they reach out to the school, and the school picks a host family for me.
Right.
I had no connections to the family before, and I just kind of
just show up
a completely different home in the other side of the world. To
so do the people that the family you're living with, do they show up at the airport to pick you up as well? And so that's so you're like jet lag, getting off this airplane. And had you ever traveled to the U.S. before?
No, I have not been in the U.S. before. This is my first time.
This is your first time. Okay. So that's a big deal. So you're leaving that. You're showing up at the airport. This family, you have no idea. And they have no idea who you are, too. You meet them. And what was that like for you?
Well, about like 2 weeks before the flight and actually meeting each other, we had like a Zoom call, kind of introducing ourselves to, get an idea and everything. But the moment when I met them, it's kind of a blur. I was very jet lagged at the time. I just remember that it was everything was happening very fast, and it still is. Like, this year is just flying by. Yeah. But I just remember seeing all of them and just feeling like, okay, this is the start. Now my exchange year is starting, because I have a family, I have people that, also are waiting for me. So,
right. Yeah. And so how did you adjust to, you were thinking of a big thing, like you're leaving your home to go to a different home in a different world to go to school. But then there's all those everyday little things that help us feel that we're part of home and feel connected. And so I would imagine you had to leave some of those, hugs and connections and food and the different things that enhance our five senses. So now you're getting off a plane, going to this lovely family's home, what are some things that were very different for you coming from your home to this home?
I remember this one saying with with the people from my program when we were talking about like adjusting to new families where students are going to host families and everything. I feel like the mentioning that every single family in the world has its own dance. So when you come to a new family's home, you kind of have to learn the dance while you're going through this journey and adjust with them, because they're not going to adjust for you, because you're the guest. You're the person that they just said, okay, we're intrigued and we want to learn about you and your culture, but we're the ones taking you in our home. That's
right, yeah.
So you're the one who's obligated to learn all of their traditions and all of their habits and everything, and kind of learn the dance that they're doing and adjust.
So how's that dance? Are you learning it? Are you learning it well? Or are you tripping? Are you falling?
I feel like it's more of a question for them.
But what do you think they'd say?
I feel very, very grateful for the family. I love all of them so much. And I don't know, I'm very happy because I'm very like, I feel like I've been very blessed with the people that I've connected through a very short amount of time, and feel actually home. And I don't feel like there's the barrier of, I don't know. I feel like I'm a part of the family rather than just a guest. So I'm very, very grateful for that.
Sounds like they've done a really nice job inviting you and welcoming you to their home and their life. And so what is one thing that you absolutely love that they've introduced you to?
I just love, okay. This is going to sound funny. Here, I don't know. I think in the whole world, but especially in here in the United States, everyone is crazy about Marvel.
Oh yeah, superheroes,
and movies and all of that. And I love movies, and I watch movies all the time back in Lithuania. But I've never seen Marvel movies. I've never seen Iron Man or like Captain America or anything. We literally had a whole movie marathon of all Marvel movies. And I'm very grateful for that, because it happened at the very start of my year. And I feel like these sitting downs with this family for 2 to 3 hours every weekend, every other day, kind of what made us more close, because you're spending time with the people. So even though the thing is very silly and funny, it's actually, I think, something that put off the base of our friendship and connection.
It's like these are the things that make us connected, whether it's in our own family or this new relationship you're in, and it's comfort. It's finding comfort in these little rituals that we do. And so my big question is, out of the Marvel movies, which one is your favorite?
A very big question. Well, my favorite character is Captain America.
Oh, I know. Good choice.
My hostess here actually got a whole blanket with Chris Evans on it for Christmas.
Gosh. I love it. I want one.
My favorite movie, I really like Black Panther.
Black
Panther. And also, I feel like Infinity War was very good.
That was a good one. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they're all pretty good. Marvel's done a nice job with their sense of humor, because people I have young boys, and Marvel, that universe is something that my kids are growing up with. They love it. And I'm so glad that I can say I love those movies too when we watch them, because you said, this family is teaching you is what a lot of us families probably do in North America. We do connect around Marvel, and it's nice to hear that from you, because we don't think about it. It's just part of our everyday culture. Everywhere you go, you see that the Spider-Mans and Black Widow and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So we when I go watch those movies, it's nice because they do such a nice job making it funny and relatable. And they also put this edge on with the superheroes that kind of make them, they have superpowers, but they're humans. So they don't, they struggle with similar things that you and I would struggle with. And so it's nice to connect to that. So I love that they introduce you to that. And it's funny, right? Because the things that you don't realize that you do in your own home, and then you go to someone else's home and you learn the things they do, you're like, oh, this is a bit different, but I like it. And who knows, maybe when you go home, you and your family will start watching some of these movies, right? Or at least appreciate the movie or the rituals that you guys do together. So what was the first thing that you smelt or heard or even saw? I don't know, think of your five senses that reminded you of home. What was the first thing when you got here? You're like, you smelled something or you tasted something or you touched something and you're like, oh, this reminds me of my home, and kind of made you miss home a little.
I feel like during Christmas time, especially Christmas time, my grandparents and my parents have sent me some things from Lithuania that are like traditional, so I also could introduce my host family to that.
Oh,
so it kind of made me kind of nostalgic to see the same things I see every single year, and now I'm like seeing it too, but at the same time it's not the same setting and not the same environment. So it's but like the very first thing, I don't really remember.
Just so much has happened, I'm sure.
So much has happened. But what's very nice about Baltimore, actually, that Baltimore has a very big Lithuanian people community.
Oh.
And they actually have a Lithuanian hall where every Friday you can go there and there's Lithuanian dishes and food that you can eat. And we've been there I feel like 3 or 4 times now with my host family. And the waiters and the staff are all Lithuanian. So I'm sitting there ordering food in the United States, but I'm speaking Lithuanian.
Yeah.
And it's very nice to see. And people are their older age there. But it's still, like when I was talking about the sense of community, these little things, just having a random place in some building where you serve national traditional Lithuanian dishes and food, and there's Lithuanian music playing in the background. There's very it's a very nice feeling knowing that people who immigrate to other big countries still carry the love for Lithuania and want to share with other people that are going through the same. So.
Oh, that's really well said. That is comforting and nice to know, for sure. Did you know that there was a big Lithuanian community before you came to Baltimore?
I had no idea, and it's actually funny because my mom in Lithuania, she Googled it, and she's like, "Oh, there's this thing in Baltimore. You should check it out." Okay, so we went there, and turns out there's a whole place for Lithuanians.
And it's nice that you were able to bring your host family there too. So they've gotten to get a piece of you, as even though they're hosting you. It's a nice way to connect and learn about, again, each other's culture. And I think the more that we can do that, that's a big pull and push for me too, coming from Canada and born and raised here. But I'm first generation, so my parents immigrated here. And so when you say it's nice to see that people that have immigrated to North America keep their traditions and customs, I can tell you for some people, they probably had to fight to do it. But that even just hearing that, how important those customs and beliefs are for people. And then there's some communities in North America that are so open, so diverse, that say, bring it on. Here's a community center. Let's hear your music. Let's taste your food. Let's enjoy you. And I think it kind of goes back to the beginning too, with you talking about what you're putting your middle finger up to. When you are grounded and you are present in your own way and aware, it does definitely help you stay in your own lane and also accept the wonderful things that you get to bring along on this journey as well. What was your first impression of the States?
I remember driving out the airport and seeing Baltimore. Baltimore has, for people from the United States, they're not going to say that there's skyscrapers and for me, the landscape is very different. So I was like, okay, this is definitely what I imagined the United States being. And other thing that I experienced, and I was like, okay, I didn't think of this. The first time it actually happened is when I landed in my connecting flight in Boston from Amsterdam in the airport, and I was waiting for my flight to Baltimore. I was just buying, I think, water or something for my trip, and just a random person just came up and started talking to me, and I have no idea who you are, but we're having this nice conversation, even though it's a very small talk. But
Yeah.
a lot of people here just like small talk, and that's very, very, very like different, I would say.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. That's interesting. It's cool hearing that from your perspective, because I'm, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about it. I'm like, oh, I wonder if that's something that I've ever thought of myself. That yeah, maybe when us North Americaners go travel to other countries, maybe that's the small talk. I wonder how they feel about that. You go into a store and you're just buying a pastry or you're buying something, and we're just chat, and then maybe other places are like, what is going on? Like, just buy your thing and leave. What about like things like the humor? What's comedy like for you out here versus at home? Do you laugh? Would it be the same kind of jokes, the same kind of stuff that you laugh about?
Now, I don't know if this just because with me and my host family, or is this with the whole United States?
Yeah.
I have a lot of like inside jokes with my host family that they picked up on from me sharing some stuff from Lithuania with them. Like, for some reason, I don't even... Okay, I want to talk about this.
Oh, okay, yes.
There's so many squirrels here. So many squirrels.
Yeah, we have them too, yes.
And for me, it's back in Europe and Lithuania. We have squirrels. We see them, but not like just going by on a daily walk and there's like 5 squirrels I passed. And it was so fascinating to me that I just kept pointing them out. And they just kept laughing at it because for them it's so normal.
Yes.
Now, half of my Christmas presents are somehow related to squirrels. And like the whole school knows that I'm obsessed with squirrels.
Yeah.
So at this point I'm just, squirrel's my favorite animal now.
Yeah. Yeah.
These little things that I like notice in the culture. No, well, not even the culture, just in the everyday life that are like different. And for them it's so normal that they're kind of joking about it.
Yeah.
Also, other things I like to point out, with Lithuania, there's a lot of in-depth stuff that Lithuanians have in American culture that Americans don't know about, and I love pointing it out.
Oh.
I think I randomly just said sometime that Bob Dylan's grandparents are actually Lithuanian, or like Pink, the artist, has also Lithuanian roots. And now apparently the joke is that every time something new comes up, that my host ad is always just, so did you know that everything is created in Lithuania? And we're like, yeah, but
that's so funny. That's cute.
Like, yeah, like those little like humoristic sarcasm jokes that I didn't really have before, are like funny, and
that's nice. Yeah. What are some other things? I love this. I could do this all day with you. What are some other things that the squirrel story was great. What are other things that you notice that your host family or the community wouldn't really pay attention to?
I'm a very proud ginger. My hair. Yeah. Since day one, my dad was always, be proud with your hair. It's very different, and just never change it and everything. And it was just so normal to me to kind of have that mindset that I always need to stick up for myself, because it is very different, and some people like it, some people don't.
Right.
This year, I especially experienced, there's a lot of like another thing. Yeah. I'm sorry.
This is good because I talk like this too. So thank you.
in home in Lithuania, for us, because our living room and our kitchen and our bedrooms are all on the same floor, at least in my house, it's normal to kind of just go off to your room without saying that, oh, I'm just going off to my room and anything. And I feel like my host family kind of has that thing that if you're going somewhere, you're kind of telling. And I just kept doing that, just kind of like disappearing from the scenery. So because I'm a ginger, and that's been the whole joke and everything, funny way, of course. Yeah. They kind of gave me a nickname, G Flash, because so it's like Ginger Flash, that I'm just flashing from the scenery and everything.
It's like your superhero.
It's like stupid, and but it's funny. So we just have like a lot of these inside jokes that are like fun to have around.
Right. That is cute. So I'm going to ask you something a little bit deeper. You're from Lithuania, so you come from a different country, let alone continent. yeah, and you come to the US, and so you're a minority coming in to the American culture. However, you don't look like a minority. So when people look at you, you have the red hair, you have the blue eyes, you have the light skin. And so it's always interesting to me when you meet a minority does that come up a lot? Like, are there conversations about that for you there, that I am a minority, or do you feel like people forget that, or what's that like?
I wouldn't say I feel like a minority just because I'm Caucasian, but I feel like one of the reasons why I wanted to come on an exchange year to the United States, the country that is so diverse in culture, is experiencing that. Because back in Lithuania, in different people and their backgrounds, I wouldn't say we're a pretty diverse country. We're getting there, and there's a lot of students coming in and everything. One of the reasons why I wanted to come to this year is because in today's world, I feel like a young person's responsibility is to learn about all of these things, because they're happening nonstop. And I wanted to learn more because I love learning from other people and their experiences and their lives, and being in this spot where you're put in a completely different environment with all kinds of people with different backgrounds. It's so different and shocking, but it's so meaningful to me and inspiring, because in these past, almost 7 months, that's crazy, I've learned more than I've learned ever in my life about the world and how it works. And I feel very appreciative that I have the ability, and I'm privileged this way, to learn from other people and their stories, and kind of have my own opinion and perspective of what my responsibility is here in the world.
So what are some beliefs that people from Lithuania would have about the States?
That's a good question. I'm not sure I have like a right answer to it.
Like, is it a positive view of it, or is it negative? Is there fear? Like, were there people in your family that were afraid that you and your brother and are going to travel to this powerful country?
Yeah. No, I feel like my family was very much open-minded, just because I feel like a lot of European countries view United States as a opportunity as a country in a way.
Yeah, good
just
point.
Because of how diverse it is and how powerful it is. Yeah, I feel like a lot of European countries and Lithuania have a pretty good view on the United States from that point perspective.
Right.
But when it comes to more of like the politics and everything, there's different side of the story.
With your brother leaving and influencing you to go, it's like you come back with a very different perspective and appreciation for your own people, for your own world, how even your own family, I would imagine, the things that you're learning from your host family or host parents might be helping you. Is it helping you connect in a different way to your parents?
Definitely. I mean, it's very different living with the people in the same house every single day, and then leaving, and now you have a responsibility to keep contact with the people, but it never came up just because you're always around them, and all of a sudden you aren't.
Good point.
And it's very different because, when you're in the same house with the people, I feel like you kind of forget to cherish that fact that you're together, and when you're all of a sudden gone from the house, it's like I talk with my parents every other day, 3 times a week, but I love how the connection has gotten deeper in a way that I feel like we have more meaningful conversations.
Right.
And more deeper conversations rather than, again, the small talk, which is a good thing, just talking about how your day was and everything. But I feel like it's very important also when you're growing as a person to share the experience with your family and show them that I'm thinking this way now, and I have a new perspective on this thing now, and it's like it may be different from yours. I'm growing and I'm understanding, and it's my beliefs, and it's not always going to be the same, but it's very important to kind of keep in contact. But in a way, I feel like my relationship has gotten way deeper with my family, just because of the fact that I'm on the other side of the world.
Right. I think you said that really well. And I wonder too, for your family, just like you recognized something different in your brother, they're probably recognizing some different changes in you too, that space again can be so helpful, being further away, allowing you to actually be closer. It's so funny. You're right. You're in the same house, but it is when you separate, you realize, oh, okay, I miss that, or I miss when my mom used to do that annoying thing, or I love when my brother did this. When you don't have that in the same way, in for example, in the situation you're in, staying with this family who seems to be fantastic, treating you really well, you just see things so much more clear about, I can get over that thing that bothered me about my family member, because at the end of the day, it's the big picture, like you're saying. It's about how we support each other. It's about, I know I can go to my family and say, I need this thing, or I need help with this thing. And I think traveling is such an important form of education for all of us. Yeah. Unfortunately, many of us don't have the luxury or the privilege or the capacity to do it. But when it is possible, I can't ever tell you that I've ever been on any trip in anywhere in the world and I didn't gain something from it. I didn't learn something from it. I think what you're doing and what your school has going on with this exchange student program, how long has that been going on in your school back home?
So the program is not through my school, actually. It's just an organization that students can, like, it's not connected to any schools. Oh. It's just its own organization all around Europe and some countries in Asia. And what they do is just kind of advertise themselves through schools. Oh, okay. But they're not connected to schools.
Fair. Okay, fair. I'm going to ask you, you've been here, you said, for 7 months in Baltimore now. So you're learning about the culture, learning about the squirrels, you're learning about Marvel. So that's right there. Big learning lesson you've already, been acquainted with. You're pretty much American now. You get it. What is so unique about this conversation with you is not only is it the first time that I have a fellow podcaster on, but it is the first time that I have a young person on. My demographics, the people that tend to, like, my 80 to 90% of people, actually 78% of people that listen to me are between the ages of 22 and 40. What I do have is a lot of parents that have children that are younger than you or older than you, but definitely have been there. And so this is the part that excites me so much, is that your perspective that you're going to share today and talk about, hopefully will reach out to a lot of parents out there. And maybe even the inner adolescent in us. Sometimes we forget as we get older why we do the things we do. Like I'm in my 40s, and sometimes I realize I am doing a really good job being 14 again when I'm having this fight with my husband. And so there's parts of our inner child that are connected to us, and that has to do with a lot of stuff that we don't have to get into today. But the fact of the matter is that we're always carrying our inner child with us. So I love that you, with your perspective today, maybe can reach out to other parents out there that could be struggling in some ways with communicating with their own children. So if you don't mind, I'd love to pick your brain a little bit about ways in which maybe us parents don't recognize or pay attention to in the things that our kids want us to know. And so if you don't mind, I'd love to get into a little bit about just the world of mental health, if we can just start there for a second. So, of course. Thank you. So first, I want to ask you, how is mental health understood in Lithuania? And then I'll ask you about the U.S.
Yeah, I feel like in Lithuania, and I feel like in the whole world, the mental health topic has brought up, like, it's a pretty new topic. Like, it hasn't been a very popular topic like 10 years ago, let's say. Mm-hmm. But the past like five to like 7 years had kind of exploded. And in Lithuania, I feel like even though we're a very fast growing country, there are some topics that are still kind of overshadowed, if that makes sense.
Like there's a stigma.
Yeah. And even though I feel like it's getting better, I still would like to believe that the topic of mental health, like, it should be a pretty often topic, especially with people my age, and kind of having those conversations about it, like, in my perspective, need to be a little bit more active in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For you, is it taught in school? Is it part of the curriculum where you learn about your well-being and mental health and even your body anatomy and all that? Do you learn about that?
We do, but it's a very like we don't really go in depth with it, and also it happens like once a year, or like, and I feel like because my generation is very like, it likes to learn new things. I feel like we spend a lot of time on like social media and everything, and I feel like social media kind of has brought up the topic of mental health a little bit more to the public. I feel like we learn more about it through our own like experiences in like social media and everything, rather than in school.
So that's interesting. What I'm hearing you say is mental health, you're in the culture of self-learning. So you're self-taught. You're right. A lot of stuff is on social media, which I think, okay, so what would you say? Would you say what you're seeing in social media, are you learning positive, good things about mental health, or is it balanced? Are you learning the not so great things?
I feel like with social media, it's a very slippery thing. And I feel like you have to understand the barrier of what you're seeing is true and of what you're seeing is not, and kind of have that understanding already in your brain. Because social media, I feel like it's a very good place to learn if you know where to go, but it also can be a very big damage if my thing of putting my middle fingers up was comparing myself.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's one of the problems that is a very big thing with social media, is that young teenagers who don't have the kind of thought in their head, like kind of separating the two and kind of having the critical thinking of, okay, this is probably not real, I shouldn't be taking that in, do take it in and kind of compare their lives to what they're seeing on social media. And I feel like it's very important just to know where and how to search for good and effective information in social media to gain the knowledge that you need, because it's not a big thing in school, so kids are obligated to kind of get the knowledge by themselves.
So, okay, would you say that for a parent that is listening who has an adolescent that is coming to your age, let's say, like a little bit younger than you, but social media world is what they're involved in, and you're saying that kids are sort of learning on their own in some ways, and I would agree with you that here too, the schools touch on it, and sometimes you have really, really good teachers that think teaching their students about mental health is a priority, so they will spend time doing that, but often it's individual, it's up to the teacher sort of if they want to. And so for some of the parents listening, as I was saying, what do you suggest? What would be helpful for someone in your shoes that's learning about all these things, about body image, about, you got to look this way, you got to lose this much weight, your hair's got to be blonde instead of red, or whatever you want to say. Can parents help with that? Is there something that they could be doing better or different to learn alongside their children and help alongside their children?
Yeah, I feel like I was raised very much having thick skin, and I feel like my dad especially pointed it out to me, to kind of always have that strong opinion about yourself and not let other people put you down in a way, which I'm very grateful because I feel like because of that I have a pretty good mechanism when I hear someone saying something about me that wouldn't be very nice, but I have that automatic just shut it off, because I don't feel that way about myself, so I don't have to take it in and feel bad just because one person said it. But with parenting, I feel like it's just important to let the kid know that you're there for them, whatever they're going through and pushing them to be in those rules that society has put into, and kind of making them hear that it's okay to be different and it's completely fine and there's nothing wrong with having red hair instead of blonde, or looking this way or that way. It's just, I feel like it's important to let the kid know that you are just exactly the way you need to be, and you are important, and you don't have to be, you are in your own skin, and you were put here for a reason, and you have to be this way. And it's a hard topic to put into words.
Yeah. And and I appreciate you're doing a good job, because I think what I hear you saying is parents can continue to put positive self-talk in their kid's mind.
Yeah.
They got to believe it about their kid, and also they got to keep having those conversations. However, sometimes young people want their privacy. And
yeah, exactly.
Right? As you enter adolescence, from being a child to a teenager, there's this, you're forming your own, who am I? What do I want? All these kinds of things. But also you become a little bit more private because you are trying to figure things out in your own head in the simplest way possible. And so sometimes it's hard for parents to maybe continue sending that positive self-image message to their child, because anything the parent says, the child's like, shut up. Like, stop talking to me. There's that period of time. I don't know for you, was there a period of time that you just did not like anything your parents ever said to you?
I don't know. I don't think so. I just feel like my family has a very open-minded and very family-oriented environment they put for me and my brother, that, and I don't want to say my parents are strict, because they're not strict at all, but they just they made an environment for me and my brother that we know that with anything in our lives, we can come to them with our problems and they will help us. But at the same time, they're letting us do the learning rather than they're doing it for us. So we make mistakes, but from those mistakes, we get to learn. And I feel like that's what's very important, is just letting the person live on its own and learn from its own experiences and mistakes, and gaining the knowledge and perspective from that, but having the environment where whenever you're feeling something and you want to talk, we're here for you.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I really like how you said that. That kind of gave me an aha moment too, with that you're right. Sometimes parents parent out of fear. And so a lot of their own fears are putting on their children because they're trying to protect their kids. A lot of times it's in the best interest, and it may not come out in the best way. But I really like what you're saying in terms of, it's like, whose agenda is this? You're trying to do my learning for me, but how is that going to help me as I get older? Be my coach, be my guide, stay on my side, support me, but let me make that stupid mistake over there and help me figure that out. I think sometimes parents' fears come from, well, my kid doesn't know this. My kid doesn't know better. And sometimes that's the truth. And what I hear you saying, though, is we have to figure it out on our own, though. Like, we have to go through those things to figure it out, and having that kind of open space to be able to do that with some guidelines. Like, I hear what you're saying too. Your parents aren't strict, but they have boundaries, they have guidelines. Yeah. They have things in place for you and your brother, so they're giving you all this free range space to go figure stuff out. I think that's an important message. Definitely. What if you were going to write a book tomorrow that was about things parents should listen to their kids about, what would be in chapter 1? What would be the first chapter?
What parents should listen to their kids? That's a good question. I'm going deep into my brain. Okay.
Am I giving you too much?
No. Okay. I love this.
Okay, good. Yeah, because this was supposed to be fun. This is fun for me. I want it to be fun for you too. I mean, I could talk about Chris Evans all day if that's what you'd rather do.
I'm trying to think of my own experience.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times where families prioritize family time and spending time together, which I think is very, very much important. But I feel like at the same time, when you're growing up, and I'm not saying don't spend time with your family, because that's almost everything I do when I'm in Lithuania. But I feel like parents understanding the power of privacy is very, very big, because going back to the same thought of you're the one living this life, you're the one gaining the knowledge and perspective. Sometimes I feel like the moments I realize the most about myself and my parents and the world and everything is the times where I'm alone, just reflecting and having my own time. And I feel like if the time is well spent with you and your own mind, it can help you strengthen the connections with other people and your family. So I feel like parents letting know the kids that, having your own privacy to understand things is very much important. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it really does. And I think you can take that privacy to even chapter 2 or even to the next place of sometimes, and it's even like what you're doing with the space, like you being away from home is a good example of the amount of trust your family has for you to be somewhere so far away, almost on a different planet, doing what you're doing for 10 months. Like that would be difficult for many parents to allow their children to do. Yet when you give your kids the space and the ability to have that privacy, kids can kind of figure a lot of things out on their own as well, and processing things and thinking about what that was like, reflecting. And what it does is it makes me think about, there's always lots of stats and lots of research and lots of talk about keeping your kids busy. So having your kids in after school activities, having your kids in sports and things, and all of the research towards this isn't wrong in saying that this helps shape kids, and when we keep kids busy in a healthy way, it helps them stay out of trouble. However, sometimes I worry that we keep kids so busy that every day they have some kind of thing to do after school, they have some kind of studying, something to do, that they're on electronics and their devices, that there's less and less time to have that space in your mind to A, just be bored, or B, just think. Like, what was that like for me? Or what's coming to my mind? And so I feel like sometimes we're teaching young people to not be up in their head that often, like to not have that time alone, that to fill that time with other things, such as watching a show or listening to a podcast or playing video games or what. And so I like what you're saying, because I think it's reminding me as well that there has to be a balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And coming from a place, I've always been a very busy and a very active person. I went to music school for 9 years. I did gymnastics. I did athletics. I did sailing.
So you know what that's like.
Yeah, and I know what it's like, but I feel like, again, I had a very healthy relationship with all of these things just because I wanted to do them. Like, it was my choice. It was never forced. I feel like I'm very happy and glad that my parents gave me the opportunity to try myself out in all of these different fields, being more creative in an artistic environment with playing the flute and piano and all of that, but also getting myself and putting myself in an environment where physical strength and mindset and psychology is very important in sports, and kind of exploring that and, understanding where I want to be and what is more important to me and what I enjoy more. Yeah. And the reason I feel like I stuck with music for 9 years because it always has been such a big part of my life and it has shaped me so much as a person. And I've kind of jumped around in sports from one to another. Not that I didn't have the consistency and everything. I just feel like I'm glad that I did that, even though if I maybe stuck with, let's say, athletics that I did, I could have maybe gone somewhere, with that. But the experiences that other sports and other activities gave me, I wouldn't have learned them other way. Yeah. And I feel like it's important to have the balance of, if you love something so much and you wouldn't change it for a thing, stick to it. Right. It's important. But if you're not sure, or if you're eager to learn more, then sign up for another thing. Sign up for a club. And it's important to have the balance between consistency, which in my life was always music, and then the place where I could explore, which for me was sports. So that's why I feel like the balance between keeping productive and keeping busy, what I feel like are very two different things, kept in balance and were very healthy relationships.
Oh, you just taught me so much in like the last 2 minutes, because I'm thinking about not only my kids, but a lot of kids, and just how you said about consistency. I think sometimes parents fear when their kids are dropping these sports and trying all these things, that they don't know how to commit, how they don't know how to start something and finish something. But you're right. And when you say, well, is there one thing or something that they're doing that they are consistent about? Maybe it's not the sports, maybe it's the music, or maybe it's about building computers and getting into some kind of skill. And then the other area, like we said, you know, your parents giving you all that space to roam. That's what you're saying in that, is allowing kids to try different things. So you're learning about consistency, but you're also figuring out, where do I fit in this? Do I like tennis? Do I like hockey? Do I like whatever else it is? And I like how you sort of reshifted that, because I always worry the opposite, which is we're not being consistent enough. We're letting you. We're letting you quit, but that's not what you're saying. You're like, that's not necessarily quitting. That's just, I don't know if I like this sport. I just want to try something else. I want to learn a new skill or whatnot. And so we don't have to be the best at the one thing. We can do multiple things. Well, I think that's very well said. I was going to ask you a question about your podcast for a second here, if we can go into that. So now, it's called Now. And it stands for Now or Never.
It's called NON.
NON. So, oh, did I say? I said now earlier, didn't I? Oh my goodness, that's not how you spell now or never. My apologies, because I did write NON, and then in brackets I have now or never, but I said NOW, didn't I? My apologies. With now or never, so NON. Can we talk a little bit about how does? Okay, so I was listening to some of these. And you talked about, you started your interest and your commitment to sustainability in the 6th grade. You learned something in school and it stuck with you. And ever since then, you've been on this journey to, and maybe that's the one thing, as we're just talking about, the one thing that you're so committed to as you're trying all these other things, but you've been so committed to finding a way to help the world. And so can I ask you, how does a 6th grader, like how does a 12-year-old decide to take on such a big responsibility like that?
Again, with the emotions I felt for being active and eager to learn, I feel like that's what helped me stick with it a lot. But I just remember 6th grade, there was just a normal class about climate change and all of that. It was like barely touching anything, but for some reason it stuck with me. And it stuck with a few of my fellow students at the time. And we kind of, throughout the middle school, we kind of created a club where, you know, other kids from the school could kind of join and learn and everything. But I feel like it kind of triggered for me a little bit of a deeper emotion with it, just because I'm a nature lover. Like, I grew up in a very nature environment. Like, I've always went out for walks with my grandparents and my parents, and we enjoy the time outside. And I feel like me not knowing these things until up in 6th grade kind of gave me another part of the story that I never knew. And it was like, I'm going out with my family for picnics, for just enjoying the outside, but there's also this part where we're all destroying it. But I love it so much, so why shouldn't I protect something I love? So it kind of gave me, since then, I kind of have the feeling of responsibility just to do something. It could be as small as what we all say, recycling or something, or as big as, I don't know, going to a protest or starting a podcast to raise awareness.
Yeah.
And I feel like with big issues and problems in the world, there's always the saying of, I'm only one person, it won't change anything. But I feel like it will. If you have a community of people around you, like your family, your friends, people in your school, and if you put your effort to do something to help the problem solve itself, you are doing something because you're showing an example for other people.
Yeah.
And then other people join you and kind of, start thinking about it. And I feel like for me, what made the decision to do something was just on only one thought. And that's what I tried to do with my podcast, is to make other people think and kind of maybe touch a spot where it's something so relatable to them that they would have the same emotion I had and kind of go out and do something.
Right. Are you still continuing or wanting to continue to record from Baltimore? Or have you taken a bit of a break from it? Or are you still doing this?
So with my podcast, I've been thinking before I started my podcast, it's been a constant thought for like about a year. But at that time, I was, 15 and something? So, and for me, I have these ideas, but sometimes I don't actually do them just because it takes a lot to start.
Yeah.
So for me, I just wanted to get it out there so it's there.
Right.
And I can't quit.
Yeah.
So I feel like you can kind of see from my very first few episodes that it's kind of a little bit all over the place, but it's a place where you start, especially when you're 15 and you have no idea and no clue what you're doing, and recording yourself in your room talking about.
Yep.
Yeah.
I can relate, and I was not 15. So for me, starting, and exactly what you're saying, exactly, we are all over the place. And a good friend said to me to give me some words of encouragement when I first started. He said, like some of these really, really successful podcasters that have hundreds of episodes out there, a lot of their listeners that started with them from episode 1, they love watching the transformation, because when you're connected to let's say a podcaster from episode 1 to 100, there's a lot of change. And you've been talking so much today about growth, and that's going to happen when you're going to have multiple episodes, because you're also growing. Like your project is about you, kind of like you talked about. It's challenging you to continue to do the work and do the research and do all these sorts of things to learn as well. And so for my friend, and the advice that was comforting for me was helpful, because you're right. What you were in episode 1 is going to be different as you continue to go on. But the fact of the matter is you did something that a lot of people dream about, and we have to start somewhere. And the fact that you had the courage to just do it, it really is so inspirational for someone like me who knows how long it took to start. And you're like, well, let's do it. And I love that. I love that mentality. Why not? You already got a 4 out there, and it's a matter of time and the work you're doing in between, because you had a episode where you had a young person on, and you asked her a question about what can we do, or what do you think is the problem? And she talked about how parents are the problem. So she mentioned how parents aren't doing anything, like they're not doing enough. They could be doing more. And so this 12-year-old is probably reminding you of when you were that 12-year-old that's panicking and thinking, why are we not freaking out as much as we should be about what's happening? So what are some things that you in your journey as someone who is dedicating your time to our planet, what are some things along the way that you're learning that we can be doing?
I feel like with the saying of parents, I feel like the panic came more with my generation, just because it's a newer problem, and I feel like your generation hasn't very experienced a lot of it. So I feel like that's where older people and parents are kind of letting go, just because it was never a problem for them. And for us, it's kind of, well, we are the ones that are going to live in this planet, and our kids and then their kids and everything. So we're creating it. And just going off of this journey and learning, I feel like, again, I'm very big of the topic of like communities and people, but like just understanding and learning that if, as I said, like you can start as one person, but if you build a bigger community with people that also care about it's such a powerful thing, because we as humans, we can do anything if we all stick together.
Yeah.
So it's important, and it's very interesting as I'm going off of this journey, is to connect with people that maybe are doing some things to help the planet in their own way.
Yeah.
And that's what my podcast is more about, is just kind of, in one episode I had a person coming off from sales department that works for a company that builds like solar panels and software to fight climate change through that. And my other episode was the 6th grader.
Yeah.
And that's important, because every single person, no matter what they're doing and what field they are or what kind of opinion they have, it's important to connect them if they care about something, if it's the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like everyone doing any kind of job or any kind of activity could make it sustainable and could make it a practice for bettering our future.
What do you think gets in our way? Maybe my generation and the ones that are above me, like what do you think is getting in our way to join this and be part of doing something, whether that's one thing in our own home?
From the perspective of kind of more of a Lithuanian country, because of the history, I would even say, just of how long it was occupied and everything. I feel like older people have a harder time to have a more open-minded mindset.
Mm.
And I feel like that's what's getting in the way, because us now, I see a lot of, and I met a lot of people that have this, they just want to learn, they just want to help, they want to do something. And I feel like that's a little bit of what earlier generation is lacking of, is that want to do something and to help. Yeah.
Right. How will you know if you were to, you had a little magic wand here and you could look into the future, what would the future look like if many of us get together and try to save this planet? Like, what do you think it will look like?
I just imagine it, and I just want it to be a good and safe place for everyone. Mm-hmm. And, climate change isn't just a problem that's happening because of, let's say, fossil fuels or something or trash and everything. It's way deeper in this. And there's so many people that are suffering because of it. And I feel like climate change touches on every single problem that we experience on Earth. If it's lack of it in education, if it's racism, if it's any kind of problem. And that's what I feel like with solving climate change, you go in depth with all of the problems. Mm-hmm. So without it, I feel like the world would just be a safe and a good place for people to live in.
Yeah, I think there are lots of, it's like a spider web. There are a lot more connections to climate change that's happening that many of us are not recognizing. And when you look up and you start reading things, I was like reading this article the other day, and I was going to ask you this, because there was talk about how some people now are saying, I don't know if you've heard of what post-traumatic stress disorder is.
Yeah.
And now some psychiatrists are talking about pre-traumatic stress disorder. And what they're saying is, for folks like you that are getting ready to graduate from high school, your next step would be to apply to go to university. And for a lot of young people, the stress that they're experiencing is this pre-traumatic stress, in that they can't even plan for their future. They won't even apply to university because they're so fearful and worried about how there is no future. And so I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to be honest, I've never looked at it that way. And maybe that's a problem. I work in mental health all my life, and I've never heard of something like that before. And I think for sure that's possible. We have unknowns, we have fears, we have anxieties, we have all these sorts of things. And for some people, it's a little more severe than others. As a young person who is planning their future, what comes to mind? What are you thinking about what I'm saying here?
Like in terms of what I imagine my future?
Yeah. Like, do you find have you been in that place where you're so worried about, is there a future?
I personally, I wanted to dedicate my work that I will do later in life to solving problems that are important, like climate change. But in terms of seeing a future, I like to be an optimistic person, and I like to believe in people, even though sometimes there's nothing to believe in. But I have hope, and I don't think everyone will help to solve problems, but I feel like if we talk about it enough, and if we raise the important questions and put them out to the public, the new generations that are here to come will recognize them.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to build the base of just principles and important things for other people to come and have the eager want to help. And for now, personally, I want to go into the business field later in life, but through the lens of having the place of business and that platform to solve issues and, again, help the world to be a better place.
Tell me a little bit more about your future. So, business world, what do you envision for yourself?
I am now being in junior in high school. There's a lot of thinking of colleges and universities. I know that I want to study abroad just because of how my life has been and how the traveling has impacted it.
Yeah.
Again, because of the people you meet, because of diversity and all of that. I would like to major first in something like international business, let's say, or entrepreneurship and innovation. But also there's great programs like interdisciplinary futures where you basically cover all of that, all what we just talked about. Or there's programs with sustainable business or anything like that. So I am a firm believer that if you go for it and you search for opportunities, they will come to your way. And there's so many opportunities right now for people to go out there and, do something. And that's what I just want to do. I just want to have as much opportunities as I can to just help and somehow contribute to the world.
Well, you're doing it. You're doing it in so many ways. You're doing it by opening your mind and learning in the way that you have in this last 10 months. This is not common for a lot of people, let alone young people, to do. You're doing it by creating this platform with your podcast and talking about it through make sure we, say that accurately. You're doing it by coming on today and talking to me. And how I feel connected to you is that we're both doing a very similar thing. You're trying to break the stigma in the world of sustainability and climate change. You're trying to help people recognize that they can do something, and it may not feel like a big impact, even if it's doing the plant-based diet, as you've talked about. There are lots of things that we maybe already are doing, but the main focus is talk. Let's get it out. Let's talk about it. Yeah. And it is very similar to my world of mental health, and the two are very connected. That's what we're doing over here. Same thing. Let's talk about it. Let's learn about it together. What one thing in that what we can do for ourselves as individuals. This show is all about building awareness, and I feel like you're doing the same thing for yourself, but also on your show as well. It's the education in the ways that you're saying too. What I'd imagine you have to do to prepare for those episodes is probably very similar what I have to do. We have to read, we have to look up stuff, we have to prepare, we have to think, critical thinking, as you mentioned, because we're not just talking about nothing. Again, we could talk about Chris Evans all day and not need not a whole lot to look up, but we're talking about a little bit more than just that, right? So what are as we're kind of bouncing back with talking about your podcast, we're also talking about mental health, and then we're talking about both of those things. I just wanted to ask if you want to share a little bit about the 5 habits that can make a sustainable person. Is that something that you'd want to talk about today?
Sure. So from my episode, I don't actually really remember of what the 5 habits 1-to-1 were.
Yeah.
I remember a lot of them were, I felt like I was trying to put out a very realistic, very easy, everyday type of habits you can do as a person.
Yeah.
As like recycling, saving water. One of them was like the plant-based diet. Again, it's a very controversial topic. Me personally, I'm a vegetarian for now 2.5 of a year just because of this problem. But again, you don't have to be someone, these habits, you don't have to like have them in every single day of your life to be a sustainable person. Just contributing a little bit of your daily life to do these things can make you a person who wants to be more sustainable.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like what's very important. And in some cases, a lot of climate activists don't highlight it as much. In my opinion, I feel like it's not as much as you, again, consistently do something as you at least contribute somehow. And, that little stuff that you can do can be a major difference. And yeah, I feel like that's what's important. And with like the habits, my daily life, if we were to say that if you're a sustainable person, if you follow those 5 habits, then I'm not a sustainable person. I don't do these things every single day. And it's not me saying that you have to do that in order to save the planet. What I'm saying is that you even having the thought in your head going that if maybe we'll eat plant-based once a week, having that thought and kind of reflecting on it, it's a very big change and a very big difference. And it's important. What I want to send, what my message is, to kind of think about it, talk about it, and take actions.
Totally. And I appreciate it too, and I really like how you say that, because when I was listening to that, you even you talked about green your closet, so like minimize your clothing and things like that, because you talk about the fashion industry being really like high up there below the oil industry, and that makes me sad. I mean, I'm aware of it, but it makes me sad because I love my fashion, and I think, okay, so you're right. I'm never going to stop being part of that culture, but what can I do? And I really like what you meant about green your closet, like minimizing. We do live in a world where it's more. I need 6 of that same thing in different colors. I need 20 of these purses and things like that. And I think there are lots of ways, even just for myself in that area, that after listening, I was like, oh, I can start to really pay attention to being more mindful when I am shopping. Because I like something, do I really need it? And it's helping the planet, but also it's helping me, because I don't want to teach my kids as well that if you like it, you can buy it kind of mentality. We don't need everything. You're right. Like, it's not 100% going to completely change overnight. Just that episode got me thinking. And I think kudos to you for doing that, because that's exactly what you're doing is, can we just build on our critical thinking? Can we at least, when we're going to make that decision to run the hot water fill the whole bathtub up, at least can we think about that before we mindlessly do it? And I think that's what you're trying to do, is just think about it before you do it. Is there anything else about about the podcast that you want to share about that I didn't ask about that?
I think the things that we covered pretty much sums up.
What are some misconceptions from your perspective adults have about young people?
Well, I feel like the very obvious one is that young people only spend their time in social media, or they don't pursue their time for more impactful things. which in some cases is true, because there are some people that, maybe we're not raised with let's say discipline of having a balance in your life. But I feel like there's a lot of kind of negative emotion towards young people being phone and all of that, which I don't think is yes, of course we use our phones a lot and all of that, but the world is changing, the world's evolving. We're not going to be in the same place we were 30 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
And also, I feel like I've heard a lot of talk from older people about my generation being very kind of reserved and conservative and very I want to say introverted, but what I'm saying is that those things are portrayed as negative things, which I don't think it's true at all. And I don't think it's a bad thing to be introverted or reserved. It's just the way you are.
Yeah.
And again, we're going back to this thing, to the thought of, you don't need to change for anyone. If you're this way, if you don't feel comfortable doing one thing or another, you don't need to do it just because someone has another thought of idea of how young people should react to certain situations.
Thank you for that. I think sometimes young people don't get the credit where it's due. In even for me, I've been doing this body image series for some of my podcast episodes, and so just to kind of better talk about the things that some of people in my generation, maybe in the older generation, have lived with. And for us growing up, it was ingrained in our head, you got to be thin. You got to be super skinny. You got to be super skinny. And I'm sure you see a lot of elements of that today in your world too when you're on social media. However, I think your generation and the ones even younger are helping my generation understand that we can be ourselves. I think the message really came from you guys. I think thank you to you guys for saying you are who you are and be that way. And now let's do the more important stuff, connecting with each other, building communities and those things. And so that's great that you're doing that. Do you feel that way when you hear me say that? Do you feel like you guys are doing that?
I feel like my generation and our younger generation are the ones that kind of are breaking out of the so-called stigma of needing to be this way and kind of saying, that's not really true. And kind of, I feel like I want to say that my generation is becoming more accepting and more open-minded. And I feel like that's one thing that has been a stopping sign for older generations, in a way that the world has not been, in their years, the world has not been very open-minded, and not these new things that we're experiencing these days are, no one really talked about them this much. So I feel like even now, me talking when it's going to be 50 years after this, I'm maybe not going to be understanding some stuff that's going to be happening in that time.
Yeah.
But if you keep an open mind and you understand that the world is never going to stop changing and evolving just because we have new people coming in and changing it, that's what it's important to understand, that if it's not your way, it doesn't mean it's the wrong way.
That's right.
So
yeah, no, I think well said. For young people, what does feeling heard by an adult look like and feel like?
When I talk, let's say, with my parents or my grandparents about some stuff that may be a little bit foreign to them, but it's new to me and it's important to me, I feel like the very main thing of how I notice that they care about it is when they make the time out of their day to, after the talk, to make sure, let's say if we're talking about mental health and how I'm feeling, I feel like when they take their time out of the day to come up to me and to ask the things that I pointed out in our talk, and to, make sure to, it's important to me. And I see the progress when people, not just in the moment when they're listening to it, but after the moment when they reflect on it and they decide what they want to do to kind of make you feel better.
Yeah.
If we're talking in terms of like mental health and all of that.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what made me feel very appreciative and grateful when after my talks with my parents or my grandparents or friends or whatever, after that, like I see that they took notes and they came back and made sure that maybe what they did wrong, kind of, they apologized or they made me feel more like accepted, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. So following through, it's not just talk the talk, it's walk the walk too. Yeah. So you're going to tell me, you're going to listen to me, then do it versus just saying, oh, yes, I'll listen to you or thank you for that. And I think that's good. It's where's the action behind that? Where's the follow through behind what we're saying? Okay, so I just have a couple more little questions I was going to ask you that was fun. Well, we already discovered your celebrity crush. It's Chris Evans, or am I just deciding that for you?
I wouldn't say he's my celebrity crush, just because if celebrity crush, when you're like admire the person so much, like, almost like spend a lot of their time getting to, doing a lot. I like him as an actor, and I think he's a great character in Marvel. I don't think I have a celebrity crush.
Oh.
Well, you know what? Sure. Let's say Chris Evans is my celebrity crush.
Well, what about role models for you? If there's no celebrity crush, who are some role models and people, leaders maybe out there that you look up to?
This is going to be, now I'm deciding, should I say this or not?
Oh.
Because it has been a very, again, controversial topic. So, okay, before Will Smith has been presented a little bit as a violent person, I very much admired his way of thinking about life and risk taking and keeping the discipline and all of that. So in any shape or form, not saying I promote violence or anything, before that happened, I admired a lot of how he viewed life. So.
Right. I think that's an interesting thing when we have people, leaders that we look up to, the pressures that we put forth on them because we're looking up to them. And then when we see a leader or a role model make a big mistake like Will with the violence on TV, I mean, it was mind-blowing on many ways. And then it happened to be him. I think it can kind of impact, okay, can I still find this person a role model?
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's hard. And it's like, why can't we? Humans make mistakes. But I think the questions that maybe we're not asking is like, what led to that? What happened? Because that is out of character for someone like that. And so what was that about? And so where are you at now with him?
I don't know. I find it pretty like when there's a question, if there's like an artist and the artist's art, do we separate the art of the artist or between and solve that? Like,
it's a good question.
But it's different. It's different because I admired his work as an actor, but I also admired him as a person.
Yeah.
And now all of the sudden, I'm like, I still like your movies, and I like you as an actor. Can I like you as a person? And I am very. I'm honestly confused with it just because of, again, we don't know the full story. Social media always, is always one-sided.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I agree with all of the stuff he said before that with, say, life and goals and discipline and all of that. I don't agree what he did, but it's a question. I don't know if we can. It's a big question.
Yeah.
Like, can we judge a person just because of a one thing?
Yeah.
Or
and what is that one thing, right? You think of murder, you think, okay, maybe I can't get behind you. And violence is not so far from that.
Exactly.
What he did, and you're right. And then sometimes you think, okay, I guess it's not my decision to make in some ways, in that I admired him, and also, okay, why he did what he did is his. But also, I think we learn best about people after a crisis. We have to admit, like, when, at least I can say, when I've gone through a pretty big event, significant event in my life, I'm definitely touched by it, and I'm not the same person I was before it. And hopefully I'm better. Hopefully that was an opportunity to learn something. They say crisis is an opportunity. Okay, so what about, because I always want to stay relevant and cool, and I know my kids tell me all the time I'm not, so I must not be. But what is the coolest app that I don't have on my phone? Like, what do I need to get in with? How do I stay relevant and cool? So help me out.
I don't think I'm the right person for this. I'm not I'm on social media, but I'm not on all of it.
Yeah. Oh, come. See, you guys, then you young people, then you have secrets. You don't tell us. Yeah, right. You know exactly what I could do and you're not telling me.
Well, okay, wait, let me check.
Now she's like, oh, God.
No, because what do I have? Okay, I have a very cool app called Water Bear, which is free for anyone.
Oh.
Water Bear, but there's a bunch of documentaries and movies about inspiring people that have that you don't really know about, but there's small movies that you can watch. And it's very interesting. I don't even remember how I found it, but there's a bunch of short 30-minute videos on any kind of topic.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's cool. I guess that's the coolest app. I don't even use it a lot, but it's cool.
Well, there you go. Thank you for that. Now I'm going to get it and I'll be cool too, and I'll be telling all the people in the world that I have it. I love it. Okay. Is there anything that you wish I had asked you today or that you wanted to share today that maybe we didn't bring up?
I think that the talk was very, very productive. And we were talking, we covered a lot of different subjects. So, yeah.
That's fair. Yeah. Okay. What about a takeaway? What is something that listeners today, maybe something they can do, maybe something they can think about moving forward? And honestly, we talked about your podcast. We talked about mental health as a young person. We talked about all sorts of things. So you get to pick whatever that one thing is. I'm not going to be specific.
Out of everything we talked about, I think there's the common theme of just be open-minded and be, care about things and be eager to learn and enjoy everything you have and put your time to use.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you. Also, I forgot to mention at the beginning when we did middle fingers up, I forgot to say I was going to give mine up and join you because I really liked what you did, because we talk a lot about that awareness and focusing on ourselves on the show. So I like that you would cover that. So I just realized now I didn't actually do a middle fingers up. So that's what I would have said earlier, but I'll say it now that I gave mine up and put my middle fingers up to yours. So I'd like that. Okay, well, thank you very, very much for coming on. And I hope that this relationship that we started through social media continues. I've really appreciated your reaching out, your help along the way with me, as well as coming on today. And so who knows, maybe next time we'll see each other in the real life version and it's not on Zoom or on one of these little devices. Aside from that, I also want to thank our listeners today for joining and listening, as well as these conversations that we have are all door openers. So if there's any feedback that you have about today, please feel free to reach us at MFU Podcast, or you can email us at info@mfupodcast.com. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, and have a good one. Thank you.
You too. Thank you.